Good afternoon. It is 10:18 and we'll call this meeting to order. There's going to be a change of order for the items. We're going to start with item number 2, presentation discussion of risk assessment and proposed audit plan for 25-26. We then will jump to item number 3, presentation and discussion on internal audit activity report. And then we'll finish up with item number 1, presentation and discussion of the internal audit organization personnel budget, board policy, and internal audit charter. Ms. Martinez, I pass it to you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Good morning, President Irobali, Audit Committee members. Thank you for being here today. We'll get started with the first presentation. And this entails the sharing with the Audit Committee the results of the annual risk assessment and walk you through the proposed internal audit plan for next fiscal year, 2025-2026. I provided a slide with some acronyms just as they may come up during the presentation, and I might refer to them during as we're talking about the projects as well. So just to begin with an audit plan, the audit plan is our roadmap for the year. As you know, it's very important. It ensures that we in internal audit focus our efforts and our resources on the most significant risks. The plan supports EPISD's strategic priorities, and it fulfills the board's expectations for internal audit. The risk-based process that we follow to develop the audit plan also helps generate buy-in from district stakeholders as we're going through that process. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. We use a structured 10-step process to develop the audit plan. It begins with understanding the district's priorities and goals, and it ends with communicating the audit plan to the board for approval every April of each year. We conduct the annual risk assessment, which helps us drive that process, and the process that we've developed ensures transparency, alignment, again, to the district priorities, and that we have consistency from one year to the next. I won't go into more details. I think we talked about this process during our January Audit Committee meeting. But stop me if you have any questions as we go through this process. As we're gathering information, we reach out to different levels of management throughout the district. This year, we inquired and received 40 questionnaires from leadership and management levels. We also obtained input from the cabinet level administrators listed on this slide, either through that questionnaire or through one-on-one meetings. After we gathered the information, we used that data to conduct our risk assessment. We scored the risk based on likelihood and impact risk factors. As you can see on this heat map, just a quick summary of the results of that risk assessment. The higher risk areas are in the upper right quadrant, the red areas. These scores guide us in prioritizing where internal audit resources are most needed. The detailed results from the risk assessment will be included in the actual audit plan submitted to the board for approval in April. It's also important that as we're working through developing the plan, that we ensure that we have the resources to carry out that plan. And it's important that we make sure that we have the appropriate resources, meaning can our team conduct the audits that are being proposed in the audit plan? Making sure that it's sufficient. If we don't have the training, that maybe the resources that we need, that we include them in our budget, that we have training for the team that may need it to carry out some of the engagements, and of course that we have the technology that we need to conduct our engagements. And then, of course, the most important is that they're effectively deployed, and that is that we've assigned them to the right engagements throughout the year when we can carry out the plan. This slide provides a summary of how we calculate, a breakdown of how we calculate the available hours for the work that we do. The audit plan available budget hours are calculated based on the work days available. That's, most professional employees work 226 paid days for the year, times the 8 auditors on the team, less the leave hours that the district allocates to all district employees. After accounting for administrative duties, professional development, and other activities that are recommended by the professional standards that we follow, then we come to just about over 7,600 hours for engagements for this year's audit plan. We also want to make sure that our audit plan is flexible so that we can be responsive to changes and risks or anything that may come up unexpectedly throughout the year. And as such, we've also set aside a little over 1,700 hours for contingency. After we've matched our resources to the risk assessment, we create a list of potential engagements, and then I met with the superintendent to discuss the results of the risk assessment, to get input from her on any potential audit plan engagements. I also was able to meet with most of the members of the board individually to share the results of the risk assessment, discuss areas of concern or high risk that they may have, and again, obtain input on the potential audit plan engagements. In summary, our audit plan includes 15 engagements that we are proposing. This includes a mix of assurance or audit, advisory, which we also refer to as consulting, corrective action plan follow-up reviews, as well as one other review engagement in our audit plan. This chart on this slide shows how our efforts will be allocated across these different categories. And as you can see, I think we had talked previously about the priorities of internal audit. According to the Institute of Internal Auditors, they really want internal audit to move towards more advisory engagements. By 2030, they would like for us to be at 40%. As you can see on this slide, next year we'll be at 20%. So we're working towards getting to that goal. We've also ensured that all 15 engagements will support the 5 strategic priorities in the district's strategic blueprint. As you can see, we've provided a chart to illustrate where most of our engagements will be tied to the culture of accountability, followed by destination district and equity by design. And we have 1 engagement tied to whole child and 1 to academic excellence. And finally, slides 12 through 15 provide the list of the engagements. I would add that one of the engagements that kind of was added towards the end was engagement number 4, which is to conduct an advisory engagement on the destination district redesign and to look at student impact. And this is to assist administration in developing a framework for tracking academic, social, emotional, and logistical impacts on students affected by campus closures and transitions. This is a proactive engagement meant to track those students and proactively, as part of the framework, ensure that district administration is providing support to those students from year to year rather than to wait at the end of the year. We expect that we'd be working very closely with Ms. Saavedra's team on this engagement. And I know that there's been a mention about UTEP conducting a study, so we would always also reach out to them so that we can have a clear understanding as to what data they will need in order for them to do their own study, so that we're tracking that from year to year. We've also added engagements related to dyslexia, corrective action plan follow-up. We need 1 more activity in the ESSER cap, so we've added that. An inventory surplus audit. We also have 2 advisory engagements for IT. We have a leavers audit cap follow-up review that we expect will be needed based on the results of the audit this year. We'll also have a maintenance audit cap follow-up review, a risk management audit, a special education audit. We also still have a special education discipline audit corrective action plan that's based on the results of this year's audit. And then finally, truancy audit. Any questions or feedback from the board based on?
I don't have a question, but rather, I was happy to say that because Ms. Martinez has met with us to go over this prior to this meeting, that's why I don't have questions. She thoroughly went over this presentation as well as the others. So it's not like if I don't have questions, because all my questions were already answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Isabel. I just want to summarize that, best we follow the standards from the Institute of Internal Auditors, so we're following best practices recommended on those standards. And for that reason, I would say that, to summarize, the proposed plan is risk-based, which is best practices. It supports the district's priorities, strategic priorities. It aligns with the resources that we have available to our department, and still remains flexible to address any emerging needs for the district. Pending your feedback today, we will be submitting the final audit plan, proposed audit plan for approval to the entire board for the April 15th board meeting. Any questions?
Dr. Loveridge?
Yeah, just a question about the resource needs when it comes to advisories. Is that pretty much the same as a conventional audit, or do you experience any kind of difference? Do you see any differences in how you would resource those two?
It'd be similar. I mean, we really need to make sure that our team has the knowledge and the competencies to do those advisory engagements. I mean, we're all used to doing audits and you'll see when I present on organization, over 10 years of audit experience. So it is a little different, but our team is getting training related to conducting advisory engagement. Many of the steps that are outlined in our standards are very similar for audits versus advisory engagements. So I do feel pretty confident that we have, at this point, the resources and the knowledge to carry those engagements out.
I just want to point out that as Myra went through the audit last year, the department went through the audit last year, one of the things that they pointed out was increasing the engagements, we'll say proactive engagements versus the audits. And so I think in getting in line, Ms. Martinez is moving to meet that criteria. So I'm very proud to see you kind of add additional engagements this year. But I appreciate you meeting with every single trustee, or getting at least feedback from every trustee on the plan prior to this. I think we all feel very informed on kind of the outlook for the next year.
Okay. Anything else? All right. We can move on to the next presentation. And we'll be reviewing the internal audit activity report for quarter three. This covers the activity from the beginning of the fiscal year through the end of March. The activity report, again, will be provided to the board as part of the April 15th regular board meeting. It's really focused on the status of this year's audit plan and the status of corrective action plans and where we're at with that. Again, I provided some acronyms so that as we're referring throughout the presentation, we in school districts tend to speak with acronyms, so that way that information is there for you all. So the audit plan, again, covers the current fiscal year. The board initially approved this audit plan last April in 2024. In February of 2025, the board approved changes to this year's audit plan, resulting in 23 engagements. I believe we started with 18. We were at 26, and then we cut back to 23. Since then, we've had to add one additional engagement, and this is a corrective action plan for an attendance audit for a high school. So we are currently at 24 engagements. We are at 46% completion of the plan. And again, as we go through the further slides, I'll talk about those items that are still pending. 33% of our projects are in progress, and then we have not started working on 21% of the projects in the audit plan. So for presentation purposes, I've divided the engagements in the plan into two groups. The first one includes these engagements for advisory, audit, and as well as non-audit reviews. As illustrated on this slide, we've completed 6 engagements, which is the 46% that you see on this chart. These are reports that have been finalized, and we've issued the report and with the board and with the superintendent. I'll be reviewing those items that were completed during this quarter, and those are the ones that are labeled with the number 1. We have two projects in the reporting phase. That's the special education audit and the leavers audit. We do expect the special education audit, we have issued a draft report. The corrective action plan is due to our department on April 4th. Once we receive that corrective action plan, we'll finalize that report. So I feel very confident we'll issue that in April. We're also working on, we're in the reporting phase for the leavers audit. We're very close to finishing up that report. So again, I think that's something that we can finalize by this month. Two engagements are in the fieldwork phase, beginning with the Burgess attendance and truancy audit. I believe they're getting ready to wrap up the fieldwork and move on to the reporting phase. Just based on how these audits are going, I do feel confident that that's another one that we can get out in April as well. We have the Leavers Dropout Data Integrity Advisory Engagement. We're collaborating with the Student Parent Services Department as well as school leadership to look at last year's data to make sure that we correct some issues that were identified early in the year. That is an engagement that I feel we can complete this fiscal year, but might take us through the end of June to get it done. We have a data classification advisory engagement that is in the fieldwork phase. That engagement we've broken down into two parts so that we feel we can complete part one by the end of the fiscal year. And we'll keep you posted on how that continues to go, but there'll be a part two to that that will roll forward to next year. We have one pending that we have not started, another attendance and truancy audit for another school. Our goal is to begin in April, and we will finish that before the end of the fiscal year. And that leaves the activity funds audit. We will be able to start that audit this month in April as well. We're moving fast. But unfortunately, I don't think that's one that we can wrap up. And if I think I discussed with you during the risk assessment and audit plan development process that is one audit that we've rolled forward and we included in our audit plan. Any questions about these engagements?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
In regards to the truancy or the attendance and truancy audits for the 3 high schools that you have there, I know that they're just spot checks, and I just wanted to ask our superintendent, is there a way that we can recoup those monies that have been lost? And this is just a spot check. So if there's a pattern out there that we can work on to remedy such issues that we're having, or for the long-term goal of recouping some of those funds that maybe we could have gotten, but we haven't, and I don't know where we are on that.
Right, so
Miss-
I think that there's some clarification that needs
Yes.
to be made here. What you received in the audit is a potential loss. It's not an actual loss at this time. So there's absolutely opportunities for us to continue to work through so that we never realize, that loss, or we reduce the loss that we actually, incur. So, we are continuing to work through that. And so, that would be my response, that we've not gotten to that point
Right.
yet.
And I wanted to speak to those. Those are full audits. They're not just the spot checks. So we are scoping them out as we would any other audit. I do have the results coming up, actually, in the next few slides, so I can speak to a little bit more about those audits. So the attendance and truancy audits, really, our scope is this fiscal year, is this school year. So these are proactive in nature. That means that as we're reporting the findings, there's still an opportunity to go back and either correct errors or try to recoup, to find documentation to change some of the unexcused absences to excuse, so that by the end of the year, when we are reporting true attendance to the state, it's as accurate and as complete as the district can get it. So I think that's the great thing about these audits, that we're reporting these findings timely so that there's still an opportunity to correct them. Ms. Evera.
It's also my understanding that even if an absence is correctly coded as excused, doesn't necessarily mean that there's funding attached to that absence, because at the end of the day, it's an absence, right? So simply because it's an excused absence doesn't mean that we receive funding. Am I correct?
Right, there's
Okay.
some excused absences that an absence is still an absence. There's certain absences that we get funding for example, college visits, religious holy days, things like that. We just need to make sure we have the proper documentation. So a lot of those unexcused absences may turn out to be excused, but we may still not get funding for those.
So my,
Perhaps Perhaps what we can maybe do in the future is create a new code for that scenario that you just mentioned. Yes, they're not out, and we wouldn't lose that, but at the same time, we know it's okay, that excused absence, and we will get our funding. But the way we're coding it now, it doesn't show us that, right?
No, Ms. Hernandez, what I think it is an example here would be Madeline's sick. I don't call the school, I don't notify the school, she just doesn't go in. That's coded as an unexcused absence, right? But if I were to call the school and it were to be excused or retroactively were to fix it, because it's still a sick day, we still don't get funding for that day. So although we're moving it from unexcused to excused, there's no funding that follows that child because that's not funding that we get reimbursed for. The days that Myra mentioned were school visits, holy holidays. Is there anything else that's?
School trips.
School trips, so like school
There's also
functions.
certain medical visits, like if the student was in school and then they left part of the day to go to the doctor, some of those can count for funding. Also, there's a unique one where if a student is classified as, I think, illness, certain illness qualify for funding. So it's important that we're getting the documentation as to why the student is out, because some of those may be eligible for funding. But like you said, if your child is out sick, they weren't in school at all, you call in, it is excused, but we still don't get funding for those.
So I think that it's important for the board and the public to understand that the issue at hand is absences, that kids aren't coming to school.
Right.
The secondary issue might be that our protocols for documentation need to be consistent. Because if, there are a handful of unverified absences that could be cleared that would, afford us funding. But we would not, in any of the instances that are going to be presented by the audit committee in the past or the ones that they're presenting today, I want to be clear with the board that the recovery of all of that amount of money would be an unrealistic expectation, because there's many of those absences that even if coded properly, would not yield any funding.
Right.
So I think when Myra presents the information, it's projected numbers off of if every absence was excused with some kind of reason that we would get reimbursed for. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
When you put that fiscal note behind it, that number, that's with the assumption that everything gets cleared as a excused absence that is reimbursable. Is that correct?
Well, the reason we're attaching money to it is because we thought it was important for the board to note that, this represents the unexcused absences, meaning the reason there's kids that we don't know why they're not coming to school. So this represents the money attached to those type of absences. There are still excused absences where we're not getting funding for. That's separate and apart. That's still something else. But we are disclosing that, it's important to note the impact that students not being or having unexcused absences is having on the district.
So then it goes back to what Ms. Ivedra said, which is the first point is really the attendance issue that we're
Right.
facing, that every school
Attendance,
district's facing.
truancy.
And then issue number 2 is kind of the coding and recouping any loss that may have just been done because of parental engagement not being there or miscoding or things of that nature that we can retroactively fix.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that clarification. But perhaps, like I said, maybe we can create another code for those that we know are working, and now that we know what the issue is, we can fix it for the future. That's what I'm suggesting. Whether it works or not, I don't know, but this has brought this to the forefront for us to address, and if we don't address it, we're going to be having to deal with this in the future. So if we can address it now, I'd appreciate it.
And the Student Parent Services Department has been working very hard on those codes. I mean, I think we had a very large number of codes initially. With the new leadership in Student Parent Services, they revisited all of the codes that are out there. We do have codes that represent students that have excused absences, as well as some of those absences that excused and allowable for funding. And I do believe that was one of their priorities when they first took over the department, and they've done a lot of training with the campuses. So you'll see in most schools, we do see supporting documentation or the coding, like it's not as, the findings aren't as many as we had last year. Now it's just more, as you'll see when I present, it's more on the truancy side of the house that, you know, what are we doing to make sure that kids are coming to school, that we're developing the appropriate interventions and plans to get them to be here.
I understand that, and I just wanted to make sure
Okay.
that because this is just a spot check, there isn't a pattern out there that we can fix prior to it coming to this last point. And I just wanted to make that clear.
Myra, for this audit that you did for unexcused absences, did you do a sample size, or did you look holistically at the entire universe for each campus?
For unexcused absences, we're looking at all, 100% for all campuses. Where we selected a sample was in looking at documentation.
Okay.
So the data analytics team has developed these amazing dashboards that can provide principals with, you know, data that's important for them to continue to monitor so that they can help make sure that their campus is meeting or working towards meeting the expectation to increase their attendance rate. When you look at El Paso High, it's pretty similar to most of the other high schools in the district. Most of their lowest attendance day is, excuse me, Friday, 9th grade. And the largest number of absences is related to the unexcused absences. Here's the dashboard for Bowie, and again, their lowest attendance grade level is 9th grade, and Friday, similar to the other school, and the largest number of absences are related to unexcused. I'm also providing, just for the audit committee, just a summary of the more common findings that we're finding, in this case for the 2 schools that we completed during quarter 3. We have El Paso High and Bowie. I would say that items 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are pretty common to every campus. That is that, you know, we have some attendance issues related to unexcused absences, monitoring procedures such as self-audits are not being performed. We need to make sure that we're monitoring that teachers are taking attendance, because that can also impact the district in a different way. That is that we could be getting funding that we shouldn't be getting. This year, we also added some testing for ADA codes, and that has varied by campuses. So, for example, finding 7, 8, and 9, we had some findings at El Paso High. However, at Bowie, there were no exceptions related to ADA coding. And then finally, findings 10, 11, and 12 are really focused on the 45 attendance improvement plans, and we continue to see issues here in that in this case, both campuses had 60% of the plans that were not developed, and then the 40% of the plans that were developed, we looked at student absences, and what we observed is that the student continues to accumulate unexcused absences, and when we asked for documentation on interventions, there was little to no documentation provided as evidence that interventions were conducted. Any questions before we move on to maintenance? We also completed a maintenance audit during this quarter. The scope of our audit really focused on the work order system. A work order system can be used for 2 main reasons. One is to manage the activities of the maintenance department, that is, to track and monitor all work orders related to the work that needs to be done that's entered by campuses, by departments. The department does use their work order system that way. The second piece is really more of for the maintenance department to be able to use the data in the work order system to plan their budget, their staffing, and to use it in a more strategic planning matter, I guess you can say. And I think that's the piece where there's opportunity for growth, for improvement in that department. The maintenance department previously, during a board meeting, presented to the board that their goal was to complete, on average, work orders on a 2-week completion basis. What we found, based on the analysis of over 22,000 work orders, that's 100% for our scope, that the average work order completion was about 44 days. We also found that 2% of the work orders, we couldn't determine if they met the completion date because there was no completion date attached to those work orders. And then the second piece is related to First is labor and materials costs were not consistently and accurately tracked in the work order system. We also found that 20 out of the 50 work orders that we tested didn't have time expectations or estimated hours. These set accountability standards for the maintenance employees and the department to ensure that there's an expectation of how long some tasks may be completed. We also found that there's in the work order system that they were using at the time of our audit, eMaint, there was a control that was missing related to work order dates, and the work order date could be modified after the work order had been created. And we found examples of that could have happened, that happened. And finally, we found that the maintenance department is working towards a preventive maintenance schedule and building inspections, but at the time of our audit, not all areas within the maintenance department had those in place. Any questions?
Yes, I've heard, it's my understanding that we're transitioning into a new system for the maintenance department. Can you and your department maybe share some of that?
Yes, absolutely. You know, I think that one of the things that we found in the operations division that has been challenging, specifically as it relates to work orders, is that it's not a two-way system primarily, meaning that right now the system that was in place, although the maintenance and operations department can see what's happening, it's not something that the campuses can see and track and reach out. So that was one issue. So the system that was being used was somewhat antiquated. So when we hired Mr. Pearson, that was one of the first things that he noted. We have gone out for bid. We have procured and ascribed to a new system. And so we fully expect to see some of these issues found in the audit remedied because the system has more accountability features. It does have more of a two-way system so that it can be seen on both ends. And it gives the chief operations officer and his team a better, you know, just assist the systems, the structures, and the conditions for them to track in all aspects, you know, where we are with work orders and maintenance for campuses. So we fully expect that. Now, a system isn't the end-all be-all. It also takes people. And so, again, I believe that with the new leadership and with the new system, we're going to be able to remedy and reconcile some of the findings in the audit.
Mr. Pearson, would you be able to share some of the things you're doing in your department that kind of will streamline these processes? I mean, I know in talking to Myra, it seemed like the process prior was just more of a checklist, like was the project done or not? It wasn't really used for hours, costs, things of that. That was kind of through the subject matter expertise within the department. So can you kind of share some of the changes you're making and how that will impact what we're seeing from the audit?
Absolutely. Mr. President, Madam Superintendent, fellow trustees, SB Pearson, Chief Operations Officer. And I want to start by saying that this process has been going on for almost a year now with Ms. Meyer and her team. So I do want to recognize the work that they've put in as far as helping us identify some of our inefficiencies and inequities and opportunities to get better. And so they've done a great job partnering with us to help us streamline this. As we were going through this, I will also share that I am the one that kind of kicked the can to start this process, and as we were going through it and some of the things were identified, I was asking myself, what did I sign up for? So we do realize that there are some opportunities here. And so some of the things that we put in place that we recognize right away is that our system doesn't communicate two ways, as our superintendent said at the beginning. And so part of the problem with that was the onboarding piece. There just wasn't appropriate training with the onboarding piece. As you guys know, most of our operational leaders of the past are no longer here, so we've had to have some transition in those roles, and it just wasn't a continuity plan in place. And so the opportunity we had in bringing in a new software was one of the first major steps in helping us and correct some of our issues with controls and our operation production. Secondly, as it relates to the onboarding of the new software, our guys that are in the field, our techs that are there day to day, they had no way of giving a real-time status of their work, the work order. And so some of the things that we figured out that was a problem was either because of a lack of training or because of a lack of ability to input certain information, things were left in an open position, which is kind of what tabbed the 44-day finding of the average turnaround for work orders. And so that's something that we're definitely putting in place right now with our training. We've purchased new hardware. for each one of our on-the-ground technicians to be able to give real-time updates. And so that piece will be corrected in very short order. We do have a soft rollout for the new software that'll start in June. The hard rollout will be in August. Another thing that we put in place as a result of some of the things that we're finding, there was an idea of a lack of preventative maintenance schedule. So I will share that transparently that there was no hard and fast identified preventative maintenance schedule. Part of that was for two reasons, and if we're being transparent, it's hard to have a preventative maintenance schedule when you don't have an excess number of funds to be able to take care of some of the preventative maintenance things. And so with that being the case, a lot of times you're acting in a reactionary fashion. And so we put some things in place to help us with that. Some of the things, as you guys know, that are part of our major challenges are HVAC systems. We have refrigerated air as well as we have swamp cools that we're dealing with. As a part of our construction specifications moving forward, obviously we're trying to streamline the type of units that we put in because having multiple units require that our technicians have multiple trainings to be able to service multiple units. That's a challenge for a district of our size and our skilled labor in our department. So we're working to streamline that as well with our construction specifications as we move forward. Secondly, it's the idea of production rates and managing our production rates and things like that. Currently, the current system that we're using, eMate, there's no way to track production rate from an hourly standpoint, from an annual standpoint, or from a monthly, or even down to human capital management. Our new software that we're bringing on, it definitely has an opportunity for us to do that. So myself, the director of maintenance, the executive director, we all have an opportunity to put in systematic controls that will allow us to track the production of all of our team members as we move forward. I can share that the onboarding of some of the activities that we've done with our regular inspections, like every Monday, we do campus inspections now, where that wasn't done in the past. That was a part of our new system of getting our leaders to go out into the fields and see some of the challenges and help resolve some of the issues that are happening real time without, basically provide an opportunity for principals to communicate real time with our leaders to help resolve some of their more pressing issues. We have put in a priority system. I've talked with our CFO about this as well, because obviously the number of work orders we're receiving due to budget constraints, we're having to have a very strict prioritization plan in place to be able to resolve some of those. Some of the things that we do, and our team can justify or attest to this, is right away we deal with things that affect student academic outcomes primarily. Those things that are safety are also as a part of that. And then lastly, we deal with cosmetics. So we have put things in place to help us get a little bit better efficiently as it relates to these systems. And obviously the training and onboarding of these systems will help us with that as well.
Thank you, sir. And Myra, I think this is the value of the audits, how they can work in tandem with the district. I know as the TSSC does audits into, or safety checks, or whatever they're called, safety audits, I guess. Knowing that we have a prioritization list for, say, a door not working, and that's gonna, jump above kind of some of the more cosmetic or not as important items is important, I think, for parents in the community to know as we think about safety of our schools and our students. So thank you, Mr. Pearson and Ms. Martinez.
Right. And then Mr. Pearson and his team did provide a corrective action plan, so we'll be monitoring that. I believe the first activity is due at the end of June, so it'll cross over to the next fiscal year, and we did include that in our audit plan so that we can follow up on that. The next group of projects we have to present on is the corrective action plan follow-up reviews that we conduct. There's 11 engagements in this group, and as you can see, the top engagements that we've completed 5 out of the 6 in this group. The ESSER corrective action plan follow-up review was completed this quarter. You're going to see that the ESSER is still on our CAP dashboard. The reason for that is that there were 4 activities that were due this fiscal year, but there's 1 remaining activity that's not due until the next fiscal year. So we need to keep it open until we can, monitor that final activity has been implemented. As far as the rest, all those CAPs have been closed. We do feel that the discipline, the PEAMS, the buoy attendance audit CAPs will all be closed before the end of the fiscal year. Again, I just mentioned that the maintenance CAP is, we just received it from the operations team. There's nothing to review this year, so technically it's probably gonna come off our audit plan. We could keep it, we're gonna keep it in our CAP dashboard because we need to monitor in case any of these activities take place earlier than expected, but I do expect that there might not be anything to review for that one. We'll find out about the special education cap once we receive it at the end of this week. And then the leavers dropout assurance, we have not received yet. We haven't started working on that one. Again, we completed the ESSER cap follow-up review. We found that the four activities that were scheduled for this fiscal year have been implemented, and we've completed our review of the work that we needed to do on the cap for that year, and we'll continue to monitor the cap implementation for that final activity.
I think Trustee Hernandez has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On slide 13, Ms. Saavedra, on that one regarding the ESSER, while meeting with Ms. Martinez, she had mentioned that, and I think this is the one you had mentioned, that we had changed the scope of a project, or we were allowed to do that. I just want to make sure that we have the audit trail documentation on there and the justifications as why we did what we did, because for me, in the grant world that I lived in, they'll come back maybe in a year or two and follow up to make sure that we have what we have, or however we decided to move forward on that we just have the audit trail documentation intact for us to feel good about those changes that we did.
Yes, on that one, Ms. Saavedra, what happened is the initial use of funds plan was developed prior to you having input. Once you arrived, I believed you worked with your team to make several changes to that plan. And yes, part of the recommendations, Ms. Hernandez, was to document the reason for those changes and make sure that we had the appropriate forms required by TA that we keep here should they come for an audit. Next, we have, we're still providing a status on the open corrective action plans that we're currently monitoring. There's 3 caps that are a part of our dashboard. The first one's listed, ESSER, PEIMS, student discipline. We've added a 4th one. You're not gonna see it in our dashboard charts because we received it right before this report was due, but we are monitoring that 4th cap as well. And we're working with the principal to review evidence that's already being submitted for that cap. So as you can see, the ESSER cap is at 80%, the PEIMS cap is at 67%, and the discipline cap is at 94%. This provides just a snapshot of where we are as far as activities. So you can see for each cap how many activities remain open, how many have been implemented. And we do have one under the PEIMS cap that was not effectively implemented. This was related to the ensuring the accuracy of dyslexia coding data. For this one, we did close it for these cap purposes. However, my team is working with the special ed department team and with school leadership to develop a separate corrective action plan that doesn't just have one activity, but really is focusing on revisiting that process, enhancing controls by developing stronger procedures, a lot of training, making sure that as individuals that are assigned to work on dyslexia coding at the campus may change multiple times throughout the year. So also a way to track those changes so that people can be brought on for training so that we can ensure that we have better data quality. And then finally, we have just a dashboard of the upcoming due date ranges for activities. There was an extension for the 2405, that's the PEIMS cap for 4 activities. And we do 1 activity past due for the discipline. So these 2 activities are related to the PEIMS office as well as student parent services. For the one that's past due, we've been working with both those teams to get that closed. I would say that we're trying to be as flexible as possible since those 2 departments are really taking the lead in the transition with TEA for the PEIMS submission, EdFi. So there's been a lot of changes and due dates coming from TEA on that process. I think that they're very close to wrapping it up, and we're hoping that they can get that done, and not in the coming week, then the coming month. But we'll continue to work with the teams to get that done.
Ms. Saavedra, on 2408, can you just get with your team and see if what the timeline we're looking at is? If it's a week, I don't think we need to go through the process of an extension just because it's a week. If it's going to be more on the higher end of a month, 2 months, if we can just get a extension form signed by you so that we can be back in compliance on that item and put it back into the order. I think that's definitely understand the changes that are coming with TEA and what that means, but we just want to make sure we have the proper amount of time to get the item done.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And again, I think I already provided an update. The PEAMS cap was extended. There's 4 activities pending. One is related to procedures, and the other one is on training. And the discipline cap is on following up with TA on 3 non-reported disciplinary records. And that's it for the activity report, unless anybody has any questions.
No, I don't have any questions, but I want to commend Ms. Martinez for tackling all these big projects, and you did an excellent job, and so has your team, and thank you for that.
Thank you,
And we
Mrs.
continue to see the excellent progress that you all have done for us. Thank
We're
you.
just doing our job, but thank you. Okay, the
I just,
final,
sorry, I just wanted to say
No.
thank you. Thank you for meeting with us earlier and kind of giving us a, brief explanation of, all of the plan. This is all great stuff that we're doing for our district. And thank you to Mr. Pearson for all of the information. It was great to put the plan, or a face to the plan, and to kind of get a bigger idea of how we're doing, how you're implementing all of the new things. And I am a huge fan of the every Monday campus inspections. I think it's great that we actually have people there seeing things in person. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you
No,
for
thank you.
all of that hard work and information and educating us on how these things, work. And if I could just kind of, I guess, I for the attendance, I think that it would be beneficial to parents. I mean, just this morning, I've gotten maybe 5 emails, texts about, how to excuse your child or where to get the proper documentation or emails and things like that. So I think that it would be beneficial to parents and make that a little bit easier to, get the proper documentation in to excuse our kids. Thanks.
thank you. Okay, the final presentation is on the internal audit organization, personnel, budget, policy, and charter. I added this to the agenda based on a requirement from our board policy CFC local that requires I annually review with the board, and it is important information. As far as the organization, the global internal audit standards define independence as the freedom from conditions that impair the internal audit's function's ability to carry out its responsibilities in an unbiased manner. Organization independent is vital because it allows us to carry out our work without interfering from those individuals that we're auditing. According also to the standards, organizational independence is effectively achieved when the head of the Department of Internal Audit reports functionally to the highest governing board of an organization, and for that EPISD, that would be the Board of Trustees. I want to say that in EPISD's internal audit department does have that organizational independence. There's, in this slide and the one that follows, there's 7 examples of functional reporting as well as the board actions that demonstrate that we are following those requirements that we've outlined in our policy and in our charter, including that the board has the sole authority to approve the internal audit charter, the risk-based audit plan, as well as the resources for the department. The board does receive communications from me on the internal audit's activity and performance relative to our plan. As you know, we have quarterly meetings with the audit committee, and those reports also go to the full board as well. Only the board has the authority to approve the hiring and firing of the chief internal auditor per board policy as well as in the job description. The board approves the compensation for the chief internal auditor. The board also conducts the annual evaluation of the chief internal auditor. As you know, the most recent evaluation was conducted in September of 2024. And finally, the chief internal auditor does have direct and unrestricted access to the board, allowing for independent discussions about audit concerns, emerging risks, and issues involving district leadership. Next, I wanted to, as required by the policy, I'm reviewing the assigned personnel to the internal audit department. There are 9 employees in the department. I have 1 executive assistant, and there's 8 auditors, including myself. We have 2 supervisors right in the middle. You'll see Arely Carrillo and Midna. We also have 2 senior auditors on your left. You'll see Julie and Liz. We have 1 IT auditor, Tony Alanis, and then we have 2 internal auditors, Yvonne and Sue. One important piece that goes kind of along with our audit plan is we need to make sure that we have qualified individuals conducting the audits. Our department does have those 8 budgeted auditor positions that are currently filled. We haven't had any turnover, knock on wood, since 2020, August of 2022. Internal audit staff do collectively possess the knowledge, skills, and other competencies needed to perform their duties. As you see on this slide, in this table, the entire team, 100% of the team, has more than 10 years of audit experience. We also have 75% of the team that has more than 10 years of experience working in a school district setting. The 2 individuals that have less than 5 years previously worked in public sector organizations, one for the city of Socorro and one for the city of El Paso. So I do feel that complements school district operations pretty well. We have 3 auditors with advanced degrees, and also 7 of our 8 members of the team hold relevant certifications and designations. I wanted to elaborate on the certifications that our team has. As you can see here, it provides a count by certification. The ones listed at the top, the Certified Internal Auditor, Certified Fraud Examiner, and Certified Information Systems Auditor certifications are globally recognized certifications. That means that our certified fraud examiners can go work in South Africa. They have an El Paso ACFE chapter, and they would be recognized for their knowledge of certified fraud examiner, that they can conduct a fraud examination because of their qualifications. Also, I wanted to kind of elaborate on the Chief Internal Auditor certification. It is another globally recognized certification. It's considered the gold standard for any auditor. I want to recognize Arely Carrillo, just take a minute, because she recently completed and obtained her CIA credential and was recognized during our annual meeting of the El Paso chapter of Institute of Internal Auditors. She completed it in March. It is a very it's a challenging credential. It's a multi exam. It requires them to take a 3-part exam. It requires they have certain qualifications as well as education, and by getting the credentials, they're committed to continuing their education and commitment to internal audit. And I do want to say that, globally. Globally, there are over 200,000 certified internal auditors, people with designations. In El Paso, during our last meeting, they announced that there's about 45 members in El Paso that have the CIA designation, and at EPISD, there's 3 of them. So, really happy to report that. I also included the proposed plan for next fiscal year. I broke it down by category, so you can see where our operating budget, where we're allocating the funds for operating budget. As you can see, most of our investment is being made in training, as well as technology, equipment, and software. The next, I also wanted to present for you that multi-year comparisons. We are proposing a decrease in our budget by 4%. In 2024, from 2024 to 2025, we requested an increase of 6% so we can purchase our audit management software. Once we went out for quote and got the software, we're able to achieve some cost savings. So we're giving some of that money back for next year. And then I broke it down further for any category that has over $10,000, so you can see, where we're allocating our money. Training, we get training from different organizations, including the Institute of Internal Auditors, the local and national chapters, as well as the ACFE, local and national chapters. TASBO, of course, as well as our IT auditor gets training from ACI Learning. We replace our laptops on a 4-year rotation. So we've budgeted to replace 2 of the laptops for the team. I guess it's important to disclose that we're on a 4-year rotation because we rely heavily on technology for our data analysis. As I just said, we're looking at tens of thousands of data records, whether it's for attendance or for the maintenance department. So we need to make sure that the specifications for, the specs for our technology is up to date and that can handle all of that data. We also invest in data analysis software, that's Caseware IDEA. We purchase a Intella software maintenance for one license, and that helps us when we have to go through email records for investigations or certain engagements. And then finally, the largest cost is related to our audit management software subscription for 9 licenses. The internal audit department also manages the hotline for the district, and we've set aside about $11,600 to pay for that hotline for next year. The policy requires that I go over the policy itself with the board. Board policy CFC local outlines, it has sections that are applicable to internal audit. One of them is on the chief internal auditor, the selection, job description, certifications, and yearly evaluation requirements. It also has a section on the internal audit itself. It has the expectation for the department to follow professional standards. It talks about the reporting relationship between the chief internal auditor and the board. It requires that we have our annual audit plan and that we bring the charter to the board every year. And then, of course, it requires that I review organization and assign personnel on an annual basis with the board. The board policy CFC exhibit is our internal audit charter, and I think I've talked to you guys all about how important it is, this charter is to our department. It establishes the authority of the department from the board, it ensures organizational independence, and everything else that's on this slide. Due to changes in the professional standards that we follow from from the Institute of Internal Auditors, there are some recommended updates to that charter. It's I tried to make it as visually easy to present to the board. What you see on the left is the current structure of the charter, and then on the right, you see the new structure, the new sections. And as you can see, if you tie it just by color coding, most of the sections, all of the sections have made it to the new charter, and they've added certain pieces, including related, I would say the biggest one is probably related to board oversight. So I've shared with the trustees some of that information, and I included it in this slide. It's a total of 14 expectations. I'm happy to say that those expectations are something that we currently have in practice. It's just being put in writing, again, for accountability purpose and to show the district's commitment to adhere to those best practices from the Institute of Internal Auditors Global Internal Audit Standards. So I'll be working with the audit committee and the board president to make sure that all of those activities are something that we implement into our quarterly meetings with the audit committee. And the last item that we've added, this was a recommendation after a quality assessment, is to include language that documents that our department is overseeing the fraud, waste, and abuse hauling. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
No, ma'am. I think there are no questions. Thank you so much for all the pre-work you did. It makes the audit meetings go smoothly, so we do appreciate the fact you met with all the trustees and gave the information out and answered any questions. So,
Thank you so much.
To the entire team, congratulations again. Well deserved. And with that, I'm going to close this meeting at 11:15. Thank you, everyone.